Hello and welcome to Mrs. Kirkman's Music Theory videos. Today we're going to be looking at melody and we're going to look at all the features of melody, have a listen to some musical features of these melodies so that you can identify them or create them within your own compositions. Accompanying this video is a keyword sheet that I would like to use and write down all the key definitions of the words we're going to be talking about within this clip. The first word we're going to look at is pitch. And pitch means how high or low the notes sound to our ears. So this is an example of a high-pitched sound. And this is an example of a low-pitched sound. The next word is shape. And shape describes whether the melodies fall or rise in pitch. So underneath is ascending, and this is an example of an ascending pitch because it goes up. And this is an example of a descending pitch, and that goes down. The next word in our sequence is interval. An interval is the space between two notes. So for example, if you've got a C note and a D note, the interval is a second. That sounds like this. If you've got a C note and an E note, the interval is a third, and that sounds like this. If you've got a C and an F, the interval is a fourth, and that sounds like this. If you've got a C and a G, the interval is a fifth, and that sounds like this. If you've got a C and an A, the interval is a sixth, and that sounds like this. If you've got a C and a B, the interval is a seventh, and that sounds like this. And finally, the distance between a C and a C that's 8 notes above is an octave, and that sounds like this. To help you remember how different intervals sound, you could use popular songs, so I've put some examples in here to help you. The first one is a second, and it's Happy Birthday. The next song is a third, and it sounds like the beginning of When the Saints Go Marching In. The next song is a fourth, and it sounds like Here Comes the Bride. The next song is a perfect fifth, and it sounds like the beginning of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. A sixth sounds like Jingle Bells. A seventh sounds like part of the chorus in Take On Me, where he says, "Take me on." Finally, an octave sounds like somebody singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the beginning where she sings somewhere. Range refers to the notes that are included in that melody. So it might have a small range, so it might include only a third, or it might have quite a large range. It might include something like an octave. So a song that includes a range of about a third sounds like this. And a song that's got a large range of something like an octave sounds like this. The next word we're going to look at is steps, or a conjunct melody. That means that the notes are no more than a tone apart, so from C to D, D to E, E to F. And a conjunct melody sounds like this. Opposite to that is a melody that is formed with leaps, or is a disjunct melody, and that is a melody that is formed from notes that are not next to each other, so they might be 2 tones apart. That sounds like this. Most melodies, though, are a mixture of steps and leaps to get that effective sound, to make it nice and memorable. The next word on our list is phrase. Phrase means a section of music. Usually it's joined together by an overarching line from the first note to the last note. I always understood it as if you were a wind player or a brass player, it would be where you'd take a breath. If you were a singer, it would be the end of a phrase before you take a breath. It's usually a short section of music. The next word on our list is sequence, and a sequence is a series of repeated information on a certain instrument, and that information can be repeated either higher in pitch, lower in pitch, it could be repeated at the same rhythm. It's just something that is repeated. Here is an example of a sequence that is repeated and it changes pitch. The next word on our list is ostinato, and a melodic ostinato is a short phrase repeated throughout a composition. Sometimes it's slightly varied or transposed to a different pitch, but it's always repeated. Can you identify the ostinato in this piece? If you identified this as the melodic ostinato, you'd be correct because it's repeated several times in the piece. The next word on our list is atonal. Atonal simply means that the notes don't belong to a key signature, so they might not belong to the key signature of C, for example, or A minor or E flat minor. They don't belong to any key signature, they're not in any kind of order or group. So here's an example of a piece of music that is atonal. Our next word is tonal, and a tonal melody means that all the notes within it belong to a certain scale. So for example, they might belong to the scale of C, and all the notes in the scale of C sound like this. Or the notes might belong to the scale of D minor, and that might sound like this. So the composer can pick any of those notes within that key signature and use them for their melody. The next word on our list is choral, and this means that the melody is sung by a large group of people. It might sound a little bit like this. You are my fire, the one desire believe when I say I want it that way. Our next word is diatonic, but to understand this you'll need to know what tones and semitones are. So a semitone is the smallest space you can go on a piano between two notes. So that's between C and C sharp, D and D sharp, E and F, etc. A tone is two semitones, so between C to D, D to E, E to F sharp, etc. A diatonic scale goes tone, 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 semitone, tone, tone, semitone, and so on. So that sounds like this. The next word on our list is chromatic. Chromaticism is where you've got notes that don't belong to the key signature within the melody. So an example of that would be this. If you had to identify this in a score, your normal key signature at the beginning of a piece would have the normal amount of sharps or flats or whatever it would be for that piece. But if you spot any sharps or flats written next to notes, that indicates that in that piece there is chromaticism. Our next word is pentatonic. Pentatonic means a scale that uses just the sharps or flats, and that sounds like this. Our next word is canon. Canon means where you play the same melody slightly after the first time it's played, and that sounds like this. Our final word in the melody sequence is counter melody or counterpoint. A counterpoint or counter melody is where there are two different melodies being played at exactly the same time. So that sounds like this. In that arrangement of Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time, the right hand or the higher pitched part of the piano was playing the melody, and the left hand or the lower pitched part was the counter melody. Thank you for listening to this workshop on melody today. Please make sure that you keep reviewing the information to help you with your composition and your listening tests. Try and identify any of these features in other pieces of music that you listen to give you good practice for the exam. Thanks for listening. Bye!